Hello, everybody. Here we are for another special installment of Biology in the Basement, special edition, You Teach the Class. As you can see, we're going to learn about birds, thanks to Lucia and Lexi, despite some technical difficulties, but we got it all worked out, and we can learn about the birds now. But, of course, before we do that, we need a fact of the day so we can get started. And it turns out that there are only 6, yes, 6 professionally employed skywriters, those guys who write notes and messages in the sky with special smoke. So I'm going to guess that's a pretty expensive endeavor. All right, on to the birds. Speaking of things that mostly fly, right? We've got a multicellular organism, obviously, which you can put in your sheet. They are eukaryotes, and they all have feathers, and most fly. This one is your classification page, right, where we're looking at a class. A lot of you guys had phyla for your projects, but these guys are further down into a class. Aves, birds, right? Hence where the word aviation comes from, right? So there are 5 major subgroups. If we were really to break it down, there's like 30 or 40, but they hit the big ones, right? These are the 5. No one can pronounce these words except for professional ornithologists, as they're called, so I won't even attempt. But just to think about how diverse the bird class is, right? You've got all kinds of birds that are land birds, right, that don't fly. You've got penguins, you've got flamingos and other types of like shorebirds, as they're called, pelicans, stuff like that. Then you've even got the other ones, your cranes and your herons. You've got all the other predatory birds, hawks and things like that. You've got vultures, you've got songbirds, you've got, the pigeons, hummingbirds. There are just so many birds out there that there are many subgroups within this, so they are super diverse. And not to mention, remember the terror birds that we learned about? Oh, those things give you the creeps. Anyways, what do they eat? Pretty much anything, depending on the species, right? We have predatory carnivorous birds. We have some that just drink pollen all day long, but that doesn't keep them from eating seeds or bugs or whatever, as we learned in the Darwin Beaks of Finches lab. Habitat, same thing. Where do birds live? Pretty much everywhere, right? They're even found in the Arctic, right? We've all seen the March of the Penguins in one form or another, where they survive in very cold environments, but they also can live everywhere in between there and even found in deserts. The Beaks of Finches lab focused on how their beaks are a great adaptation depending on what food source they have, but also their feet are another adaptation. A lab we used to do before Beaks of Finches came out was to look at the foot of a bird and decide what it used its foot for, right? Because some have webbed feet for swimming, some have, talons for catching prey, some have them for walking. It all depends. Their wings, same thing, depending on if they're hovering birds or if they, if they fly just short distances or long distances, if they're quick or they have silent flight. The adaptations in just these 3 structures alone are amazing. Okay, so for your slides here, right, we got the multicellular. They have an internal skeleton, but they don't have a jaw. They've got a beak. Their nervous system has a brain, right, spinal cord, nerves, and excellent senses, which we'll hit at another spot, right? Good example of that, like they have here, is the eagle and falcon have 8 times sharper vision than we do. Another similarity with humans is they have a 4-chambered heart. This helps to keep, as we'll learn, the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood separate, which of course leads to being able to be warm-blooded. We'll talk about that when we get to the circulatory system, but they have a four-chambered heart just like mammals do, with this nice septum keeping the two types of blood separate. Their digestive system is continuous, but they do have some fancy structures like a crop, which is that little pocket in their neck where they store food, either because they just need it for later or because they have babies that want to come and feed out of it. Their stomach is a little bit different, as well as their digestive tract. That's why it's called a gizzard and not a stomach, even though it is somewhat similar. They do use good old enzymes, mechanical and chemical means of digestion. So you can see how it's similar to ours, but they do have this fancy gizzard. Here's that pocket or that crop under their throat, right? And then this proventriculus, which is the top part of their quote-unquote stomach. Okay, fun fact. Flamingos, emperor penguins produce nutritious milk regurgitated to feed their young. Right, so this is where things start to get a little weird. I can't remember if I mentioned it to you guys or in the other class, but certain amphibians, reptiles, do produce like a mucus on their skin that their babies will consume. Not quite milk, but they are nourishing a little bit, giving a little bit of care. Same thing here with these three bird species. Respiratory system, similar to ours, but very much advanced because they have what are called air sacs attached to their lungs. And so this helps them to fly long distances as well as get lots of oxygen into their body for their high metabolism. So they have the five senses, but pretty much all of them are way better than the average human. They are warm-blooded. That is just like humans with our four-chambered heart. They have a four-chambered heart, so they can maintain a constant body temperature even when it's chilly out there. Just got to keep eating. They do lay eggs. Their fertilization is internal. You can tell because they lay a solid egg, right? We'll talk about that, where the fertilization must take place internal before the actual shell can be built, right? That's what reptiles and birds have in common, where they have this internal fertilization, then they build the egg around it. Everybody below that usually just has external fertilization, where there's just some eggs with a soft membrane and the sperm comes out and swims through to the egg and hopefully fertilize it. This is a little bit more advanced and reliable. So like we said, not really with the nourish with milk, but kinda. So that's an interesting fact either way. Yes, they do care for their young. Like it says here, 2 to 3 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, right? They're what are called fledglings, right, where they can't quite fly. They're in the nest and they're developing. They're getting that downy feathers into actual flight wings so that they can head out of the nest. And so they do get quite a bit of care for a few weeks before they get the boot. So some good examples of these species for you to fill out in your final column are listed here. So great job, ladies. And that's what I've got for now. I might be missing 1 or 2 more, so get those into me so that you can finish filling out your spreadsheet. Okay, signing off for now.